All right, I am back with This Week at Tassi, my weekly news roundup that I appreciate you guys saying nice things about, so I'm really trying to do it whenever I can here. I just announced on Twitter that I am having a baby. My wife's having a baby in less than a month, a little girl, so I'm very excited about that. Also, videos may become less frequent for a while as that pans out. So just a heads up there. But obviously, we're very excited. So thank you for all the well wishes and all that on Twitter and in the comments probably here. So anyway, back to the news of the week. Pretty big week. Again, I've been saying this every week, but there's kind of nonstop stuff going on. Really, just one really big story, which was the surprise release of the second GTA 6 trailer. This follows the news that GTA 6 is being delayed. I think that was last week. Did I cover that last week? Anyway, this is sort of to wash the taste out of everyone's mouth that was sort of bad news. I don't know. I don't think most players care. I mean, we've been waiting 10 years-ish for GTA 6, so like being delayed 5-6 months, I don't care. Like, it's fine. And so I really don't mind that. I think it's not like the most controversial thing, but yeah, the big thing this week was the trailer. It's a nearly 3-minute spot, a lot more focused on Jason and Lucia and other side characters in the game, and a little less so on Vice City itself. The first trailer, had some Lucia stuff, but was mainly about like showing all these crazy Vice City things, which were based on pretty much real Florida things. All these little viral clips and stuff that happen in Florida that are just insane. This was just pretty much straight up game stuff. It was a mix of cutscenes and gameplay. It all looked great. I think you can tell the difference a little bit between the cutscenes and gameplay, as I think this was mostly cutscenes. At the same time, they also released dozens of press photos, which is awesome because I've been using the same goddamn screenshots for GTA 6 from the first trailer for a year and a half. They're super high quality. They show the city, they show all these characters in very fine detail. I mean, it looks awesome. This has been viewed 500 million times at least already across social media, as Rockstar has been bragging about. Without question, it is going to be the biggest game of all time, at least in terms of initial launch here. I mean, this is going to set day one, week one, month one records. Is it going to get 220 million sales like GTA 5? I don't know. I'm not saying that's guaranteed, but I would say at least initially this looks better than GTA 5. It's only been 5 minutes with these characters, but I already love them, as they say. I just think Jason and Lucia, as a couple and just how badass they look, is just a very different thing than the triple GTA 5 protagonist. Not that I don't like those guys, but this just seems like a much different take. Obviously, the world here has evolved in a significant way. Even just comparing the two trailers, like this one looks a lot better after obviously a year and a half of work and polish and all that stuff. And who knows how old this build is. And 6 months from now, a year from now, 6 months from the initial release, obviously I think things are going to look even better. It just looks pretty cool. We only have some kind of bare bones about the plot. Lucia gets out of jail. They apparently commit some minor crimes. Jason's sort of an enforcer for what appears to be a local low-level crime boss. And then they get wrapped up in some larger conspiracy. There's a running theory that Jason is going to be a secret cop, undercover cop or something, or informant or whatever. I don't know, maybe. Like, I'm not 100% sure what that's based on other than vibes, but, I would not be surprised if there was some sort of twist like that. I'm curious when we're going to start seeing things about GTA 6 online. That hasn't been revealed or anything yet, but the reason GTA 5 made so much money is because they've just been printing endless amounts of money from GTA Online for a decade, and that made them billions of dollars. So it's going to happen this time around. It's just kind of a matter of how much will that evolve? What will that look like? How much of the player base will carry over? How much will it increase? I assume it'll increase. So that's something that we can deal with later, but I don't know how much that will be promoted at launch. I think you have to beat Did you have to beat GTA 5 in order to start GTA Online? At least initially. I don't know if they changed that now, but This looked awesome. I mean, I don't know what really negative you could say about this. It just looked very cool in addition to all the press shots and stuff. And the side characters look interesting and different. I noticed Stephen Root is pretty much the first voice you hear in there as kind of the mini crime boss. So I'm wondering how other celebrity. I mean, if you don't know Stephen Root, you know him if you saw him. He's Milton from Office Space, but he's also been in like 10 trillion other things. I'm just wondering what the rest of the cast will be like. Obviously, we don't know the Jason and Lucia actors for sure. There is heavy evidence that this actress named Maniel Perez is Lucia, but that's not confirmed. I don't think she can even confirm or deny it because of an NDA, so we'll see. I mean, I buy that theory just based on the evidence, but yeah. So we got some time. I don't know. This seems like we're probably not going to get much promotion over the next year other than probably 2026 when that kicks up. So, it was a year and a half between trailers here. Interestingly, this is right when GTA 5 released its second trailer, but that was a fall release, so we're doing it a lot earlier here now. I definitely think they paired this with the delay announcement to kind of to end on a positive note here, which, yeah. So, big event, 500 million views, millions of likes on YouTube. So, yeah, very cool. Besides that, going to less good news, there is another annoying development in the Palworld Nintendo lawsuit, where Nintendo has been taking Palworld to court over multiple patent violations that they say Palworld has violated. Everyone for a long time thought that Nintendo was going to do some sort of legal action against Palworld, considering just how similar it looked and felt to aspects of Pokemon and the concept. Back then, though, it was like these pals look like they just took different pieces of Pokemon and slapped them together for new Pokemon. That is not actually the focus of this at all. It's not about, stealing visuals or anything. It's about these patented mechanics. It's been super bizarre before. I think one of the main ones that happened is you can no longer summon a pal by throwing a ball. That is owned by Nintendo. So now when you summon a pal, it just like appears next to you, which is lame. The new one here is almost even more confusing. You can no longer use a pal to glide. Like, you can't replace your glider with a pal, like you would be hanging from a bird or some other flying pal. Apparently, Nintendo says they own that concept. And so now Palworld announced in a pretty sad tweet that they have to delete that, and now you can only use a glider. They're going to try and buff, some various things to make gliders less annoying because they're way worse than flying on the birds, just statistically. And it's bizarre. Like, Palworld is not the only game to use that mechanic, but Nintendo, seems very focused on going after Palworld and hammering them over and over with all these different patent things. This does not erase flying in the game to show how specific these patents are. Like, you can still ride on the back of your flying pals. You just can't use them as gliders because that's the patent. But, can Nintendo own flying on an animal in a game? I mean, I'd say no, but who fucking knows at this point? Like, it sucks. And Nintendo in many ways sucks. Like, they're always doing stupid bullshit like this, whether it's patents or whether it's kind of anti-consumer things that everyone just sort of ignores. And they suffer no real consequences for it. The whole $80 crime. I guess it's a crime against humanity or something. The $80 reveal for Mario Kart was very negative received, and yet the Switch 2 sold out in minutes because, of course, it was going to. Nintendo just does not suffer any repercussions for this other than we get annoyed with them every so often when they do something irritating. I feel bad for Palworld. Nintendo does not own the concept of a Pokemon-ish game. It's iterative on that idea. It's a survival game kind of at its core. It's a combat game, like with real-time combat. I don't know. So much of this is bullshit, and they very much seem like they're targeting Palworld only when there are plenty of other games that have used these kind of mechanics in the past, and they really only care about Palworld because it's been successful. It's not getting 2 million concurrent players anymore, but it is as a consistent player base, and the game is constantly being updated. So, I don't know. Sucks for them. Moving on, I just read about this. There's been kind of a funny Claire Obscure story this week. To preface that, I finished Clair Obscure this week, all the endgame stuff, everything. I mean, I finished the story, and I'm like, well, that was a good note to end on. And everyone's like, no, do the endgame stuff. So I did. It's great. There's some really good story stuff in there. It's my game of the year. It's a perfect 10. It's my game of the year so far. There's other games that'll come out, but looking forward, other than maybe Ghosts of Yotai, me personally, I don't know if anything can top this. I agree, it's probably one of the best RPGs ever, and it's got me into turn-based combat in a way nothing else has. But what happened this week is there's a nerf to a specific Mael build that I call the Mael nuke build, where you can stack all these buffs on Mael and use a certain sword and a certain move to do anywhere from like 10 million to 3 billion damage, depending on how you build it. The patch for this just went out today, and from what I gather, it's about a 70% nerf. They nerf something with the sword, which was giving you double damage, and then they nerf something with the skill, which they reduce this damage by 40, and from my testing, it works out to about a 70% nerf. That is still enough for many versions of this build to probably one-shot most of the endgame bosses from my testing, in which I use this build a lot in the endgame, which I do not feel bad about. The final boss, however, has about 50, 60 million health in its final phase. So if now I can only do 20, 25, you're still going to have to really do that fight, which is extremely hard. The 3 billion build, that is very hard to do. First of all, like, you need a ton of pictos and you need all this investment and stuff, and like this perfect, combos and all this stuff. So that's a little more far-fetched, and that build would have to be nerfed by like 85%, I think, if we're getting down to 50 million. Some people are complaining about this, that it's a single player game. Why would you nerf anything? People just want to do cool builds. Having used this build, I can understand why a developer would not want people to trivialize their entire endgame that they spent a long time making. I think there's a difference between making powerful builds that are fun and that maximize the potential of your character, and a build that is 500, 1,000% better than any other build and will wipe out any remote challenge in the game. Even the hardest boss, who is up there with the hardest Souls, Elden Ring bosses, like crazy boss. And I won't go into detail, but yes, you'll know when you get there, and it's nuts. So I can understand this. I quote got away with it because I used this build because I wanted to see if I can do it, and once you got it, it was kind of addicting. But I do sort of regret using it to skip all of these boss fights, because like I didn't even get to see the mechanics in some of these. So I think I'm on team this probably needed to happen. You can think about a lot of games, and if you just put an easy button to skip, half the content, all the content of a game, I can understand why developers would not really want that to exist. So here we are. It's patched. You can still do the build. I still wrote articles about it, and it will still do significant damage. I think it will probably still one-shot, 80% of the bosses in the end game, but maybe not the hardest ones. In terms of, the games I cover more often, there was the Destiny Frontiers reveal this week. I already talked about it to a certain extent, but this was the biggest story out of this, was that Destiny 2 is doing a full Star Wars themed expansion. Not the first one, the Edge of Fate, which starts in July, but Renegades, I think it's Renegade, which starts this winter. This is the codename Behemoth expansion that is now Renegades. They talked about, we're being inspired by one of our favorite sci-fi franchises, and like, it's Star Wars. And they showed, but it's not, the storyline is inspired by. This isn't like, the Death Star showing up to blow up Mars or whatever. Like, it is inspired. There won't be like literal Star Wars characters in it, but it's a licensed collaboration. And it's, they have the Star Wars font for Renegade. They also have, for what we've seen so far, Han Solo's blaster as a literal weapon, a lightsaber as a literal weapon, and then, inspired armor from Star Wars. But then they have literally General Grievous, Kylo Ren, and Darth Vader armor. Like, as a Titan, just straight up Darth Vader. And I don't know. I'm split. It feels kind of weird to me, just in terms of optics. It feels like Destiny's, entered this new era. Player counts are dropping, and then they're like, well, let's pull this trigger. Let's get in the collaboration game. And obviously, they've done a lot of collaborations before. There was a Fortnite collaboration and like a PlayStation character collaboration, and they've done a few of these. But those were mostly Eververse things. It wasn't like a Fortnite themed season or something like that. This one is pretty elaborate. It's also at the same time Fortnite currently is doing a Star Wars season, literally, which is kind of funny. I get that the optics are bad. In practice, I think if you're playing through the game content and it's just this sort of Western and there's like a criminal underworld and stuff, I think that's going to be fine. It's not going to be literally straight up Star Wars. I think the stuff that is stupid is you're going to beat like an end of match screen and there's going to be fucking Darth Vader there. Obviously, yes, we have done this with Stormtroopers. That was kind of, whetting the appetite for this. This isn't something where it's like, oh, the Stormtroopers sold well, so let's do an entire Star Wars expansion. That's not how it works. Like this was all planned together. Like they were kind of testing the waters with the Stormtrooper, and then they're, doing this full expansion. Now, the way production times work, like that's, this was all planned together. I will say, at least Destiny has something where, you can mix and match armor pieces. You can shade things. So it's not like Fortnite in the sense that like every thing that shows up is just going to be like literally Darth Vader. The chest, for instance, allows Titans to have it cloak for the first time. So like screw all the other Darth Vader stuff and the mask especially. You could just have a Titan with a cloak now. So that's cool. I think it's okay. Like it's kind of lame, but I think in practice it won't really be as bad as maybe we're thinking or people are upset about. So I'll reserve judgment in full. It's just kind of weird and not my favorite thing, but I think at least the storyline and stuff will be okay. Finally, we ended the famed Marathon Alpha this week, and something weird that sort of happened at the end that Bungie decided to do was a final day where they unlocked every upgrade from all the available factions and also tuned up AI to be more difficult. I did jump back into this just to see how this felt or whatever. They also said they were doing a server stress test, which I'm not sure how you do that with 500 concurrent players on PC, unless there's way, way, way more players on console. I don't really get how that works. It's a technical thing. Maybe they're just doing a couple servers or whatever, but it sounded odd. It felt to me like these upgrades made the game feel like what it should feel at baseline, at least in terms of gameplay. Not that you should have 400 slots in your backpack or in your vault when you start, but things like, faster movement, shorter cooldowns on some things, faster revives and looting, and then especially more generosity in terms of heat, regen and stuff like that. It felt better, and yet that is only if you have grinded out every upgrade for an entire season, and then you lose all those upgrades at the end of a season because that's what an extraction shooter is. The AI, I didn't really notice the difference. Granted, I didn't play all that much for this. I just wanted to test it out, but that was like the final day of what was a odd alpha. I made the note that the player count dropped every single day on PC at least. Part of that may be a code problem because codes just weren't being issued enough, but I think it's also a lack of interest problem. On the final day where they unlocked everything, I think I saw the PC player count go from like 480 to 500 concurrents or something. So it's not like everyone was like, oh, hell yeah, let's check out all these upgrades. And we'll see how this works in the long term. There's also the dual issue of the Arc Alpha that had players go up every single day it was active, and that was obviously a tough comparison point for Marathon. We are going to get a Marathon Play MA. They're going to play the game and answer questions. They delayed that because Joe Ziegler couldn't do it, and they're going to talk about things to address in future tests. Maybe they'll announce another alpha or something. They already announced the beta, but they seem to imply more tests were coming. So we'll see what goes on with that. Plenty more to say on Marathon in the future. But yeah, so those are the biggest stories of the week. What I'm playing is kind of nothing. I really am out of stuff to do in Clair Obscur. and I'm just sort of on a break for a minute, and preparing to have a kid very soon. So that's a little time consuming, but yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.